We've got the before lunchtime slot, 19 minutes. So I'd like to welcome my panelists today, Pernilla, Neil, and Peter. Guys, you want to introduce yourselves quickly?
Sure. Does this work? I'm Pernilla Nordström. I'm part of the management team for Group Information Security in Swedbank, and we are also part of the first line of defense, just to make that clear.
Neil Sinclair, it says up there on the National Cyber Lead for Best Level, it's actually the Police Crime Prevention Initiatives. So we are a police-owned organisation who works predominantly with small and medium-sized enterprises to take them from the very start of their digital journey all the way up through what may be Cyber Essentials and ISO 27000.
Yes, my name is Peter Bassi. I'm a cyber SME at Credit Suisse in the third line. I try to connect the dots on cyber from a third line perspective and help to identify how we can use data to better manage cyber risk.
Great. So we're going to talk about cyber risk, as you probably know. First question to you guys. We hear about interconnected risks, third-party risks, all being part of organizations' cyber strategies. With all of these hidden exposures, how has your organization evolved, or how has the cyber strategy evolved over the last few years? Pernilla?
Yeah.
Do you want to take the plunge?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, cybersecurity is a strategic risk in our bank. Of course, it's on top of everyone's mind, and so it's on the agenda of the board and the managing or the senior manager boards all the time. Our chairman of the board is the ex-Prime Minister of Sweden, so
wow.
He definitely keeps us on the toes when it comes to cyber. So it's a big topic, of course. And what we've done more and more in practice is that we have put a lot of effort within Group Information Security to set the operating model in a better fit for the purpose. We have added a lot of new competences around communication, around behavioral scientists to get the awareness side up and running better, and just put a lot of effort in interacting with the different parts of the bank, both in first and second line, of course, to understand the business, get closer to them, and then, of course, closer to our control functions in second line. So a lot of effort around the governance and the meet up and get connected on a personal people level.
Very good answer. Sounds like you prepared for this one.
I did, yeah.
Neil?
So from our point of view, we're owned by the National Police Chiefs Council. We only moved into the cyberspace in 2016-17. Previous to that, police crime prevention initiatives were involved in physical security. So when I came on board and began to take us down that journey, the first thing we were really concerned about was that this was an organisation that was really putting its head above the parapet as far as the cyber threat went. Police, cyber, why wouldn't you attack it? So we very much work from the basis of let's not get anything online until we absolutely have to. So we've always gone through what is basically the basic awareness piece of the least requirement, the least privilege, and we have been incredibly rigorous at segmenting every single part of our business so that we can protect it rigorously and only the bits. We very much silo our vulnerabilities, and that's the way we've built it. We're very small. Our total employee count is only 53, of which the majority of those don't even have to touch the internet, and that's the way we like it.
Excellent. And Peter?
Yes, I think one of the things that organizationally we've done is to try to break down the silos, because cyber risk is a business risk and it's interconnected across the organization. So we've tried to align different parts of the organizations that fit together. Take network and cyber, you have the NOC, SOC, they need to be speaking to each other, trying to break down those barriers, making them report to the same organization. I think that has helped with the communication across the organization, and also trying to create vertical line from the cyber team across the business, say DLP being handled by the business, installing DLP applications. How does that connect to cyber? What are the cyber input into some of those processes? Privileged access management, have a vertical line. Attack surface management, have a vertical line, talking about your vulnerability, your configuration. You find out that if you do the basic things right, you probably will detect some of the cyber acts that we've seen, because what you see is that cyber can be detected across different layers of the organization, talking about defense in depth. So, but the challenge is that we often don't talk to each other. So that's where I think the most positive change that we've taken.
Excellent. We've kind of covered this next question a little bit with some of the answers, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How have the teams within your organization banded together to ensure that you guys guard yourselves against any risks that may occur?
Should I go? Yeah.
Yeah,
please. I touched base on it. We have spent a lot of efforts around building a robust security culture. We're not there yet, but we are working on that. We are spending a lot of time on building an awareness program and get out there and talk to the end users and talk to the different business areas and the other group functions and ensure that we are preparing them as much as we can. We have a mission. We keep talking about security as everyone's business, and we have like stickers that we were sticking on our computers, and we have like signs in the offices and all that, just to get everyone to understand that it's not just group information security's business to handle cyber risk and information security risk. It's everyone's business. So a lot of stuff around that, and I just want to touch base on what Joe Martinez said yesterday. He talked about security IQ, and it really read nicely to me. I mean, it's really about getting that awareness up and get people to understand that, and also find the ways of measuring that, which is a tricky one, but that's something that we are really trying to do.
And that will nicely segue us onto our next question in a second. But Neil?
So it was quite interesting. What Peter said was quite diametrically opposed to the way that my business is set up, which was quite interesting. We do have an IT team, and we have the team that, with me, does our cyber. We very much talk with them all the time about what we see as the cyber risk, the way the sector is moving. So it's very much a two-way conversation. With the IT team, we don't let them lead at all. We take it to them. That is because of the job that we do. It would be kind of just wrong if we were being led by them. We'd be failing at our own job. How could we go out and speak to 5.8 million businesses if we actually weren't doing the right thing? We didn't know what the right thing was. So that's the way we lead it on. Vanilla's point about taking the rest of the organisation with us. Although each little part that does whatever it does doesn't necessarily know anything about the other sides of the business, that cultural awareness piece is really critical. And what we introduced, and the pandemic really helped us with this because we did everything online. So we did have everybody on our Monday morning meetings. Was we always mentioned cybersecurity, even to the people who would be sitting there thinking, I don't need to listen to this. They were being given the information. Repeated it on a weekly basis. Something obviously we go out and tell our customers, for want of a better word, is that cybersecurity piece is not a one-off piece. You don't do it annually like you might do your whatever else it is, your equality, anything else that HR puts out there. Cyber is a daily thing. And anybody who looks on my LinkedIn profile after this, heaven forbid, will see that my catch line is from bedroom to boardroom.
I wondered about that. Well, it was from boardroom to bedroom, actually.
Thank you, boardroom. And the reason for that was because it became really apparent, and I'm sure most of you have had the similar experience over the last 3 years, that firstly our working day became much longer because we were working from home. So rather than that 8-hour, 9-hour cut-off, people were getting to their desk 8 o'clock in the morning, having their breakfast at their desk, not leaving their desk for lunch, and not knocking off until 7, 8 o'clock in the evening or even later. And then they were spending time on their computers. So we were waking up to our smartphone and instantly looking at messages, downloading emails and everything else, clicking on those millions of texts that were suddenly appearing in front of us, which were saying you can buy protective clothing for less than £100,000, and we've got loads of it, and none of us deal in that business, but we'd all click on the link, wouldn't we? Because how come our government can't do that when I can? Oh, oops. Those sort of things. So we became much more aware of that from waking up in the morning. And of course, we all know that we should really go to bed and get 8 hours sleep, but we all spend at least an hour on our phones when we should be doing other things in our beds. I'll leave that to your imagination.
Peter?
Yes, I think the education aspect is very important, so that users are aware, and but you're still going to have problems because the hackers are smarter now. They still get you to click on the link one way or the other. I think organizationally, especially from the third line, what we find out that we can see the big picture. We can see what is going on different parts of the organization. So what we try to do is to help management kind of collaboratively now. We have certain data that are not connected. Take, for instance, using the predictive value of data, take phishing, where it's being targeted in our organization, who is doing the targeting, and then helping to drive those security actions or responses to that. Another way we've banded together, I think you mentioned third parties earlier on. It's always a journey. On the aspect of third parties, we're trying to be more preventive, trying to put a lot of controls up front, including cyber controls, revamping the cyber processes around third parties, what controls you expect your vendors to have, what kind of data the vendors have access to. From the third line, we keep pushing our cyber team and the network team. We think it's not enough because some third parties don't know when they'll be breached, and they can only tell you what they know. So the question is, it's still our data. If we get breached, we are still accountable. So how do we determine, when a third party is behaving irrationally in our environment? Just more like the behavioral monitoring space. We're not there yet, but those are questions we're grappling with, trying to find answers to. In terms of the organization banding together, another way we say it, whenever we have a breach, maybe something was prevented, getting the lessons learned from that. You realize that the lessons learned cut across different parts of the organization. It's not just the cyber team. Take the recent Uber hack. I think that's a very good example. The hacker was able to get to your privileged access management tool, was able to connect to the password. If you have some integration, you will have said that, okay, who is this person? It's not tied to any change ticket. What is it doing in our system? That could have raised the red flag. So we trying to connect that dot, that conversation across the organization. And it's happening. One of the things we've been doing is always a journey. It's identifying some of those key controls across the organization and identifying what are the data that are available to help measure those controls. And how do we know whether those controls are working or if they're not working? And us using the predictive value of data to determine what we want to look at where we see a problem.
Good answer.
Can I just add
please.
something on connecting the dots? I mean, for us, even though, we're one of the biggest banks in Sweden and in the Baltic countries, but we are a really small player on the global FS market, we really need to expand that connecting the dots thinking with our colleagues on the market. So in Sweden, we have close collaboration with two other of the big banks where we are meeting on regular basis, talking about the geopolitical situation, what are the external threats that are coming at us, and especially also on cyber supplier security. We have just established a collaboration on that, and we have a newly established national cybersecurity center in Sweden, driven by the government, and where the public and the private sector can come together and solve, try to solve or discuss at least, and get alignment around cybersecurity related topics and how to deal with incidents in a more macro level, etc. So, that's really important for us as well.
Okay, that's a really good point. Right, final question, guys. So, do you use or have you thought about using technology at all to help deal with all of these cyber risks, to help mitigate, manage all of this stuff that we're talking about? Neil, shall I go with you first? I know your organization's a little bit smaller, right?
Yeah,
so maybe
so-
technology is not...
Yes, so for us, no is the simple answer. We don't. We're content, not overconfident, but content that we can manage our risk at a micro level. And we're very rigorous on not retaining data. Obviously, most of the data that we get is police related, so we don't get a lot of it anyway. We do nothing on the personal level, and just the way that we operate, we don't really have the issue with our supply chains. It's not something that we have to worry about. Having said that, it is something that we are continually talking about to the people who we help, because again, as Pernille touched on the point there, is the supply chain gets left behind so much, I think, certainly by enterprise. And it can be forgotten, that those 3-4 person businesses have absolutely no idea what the hell we're talking about, which makes life really difficult. Again, going back to my boardroom to bedroom, the majority of people, not in this room, clearly, but the majority of people are still struggling with multi-factor authentication and using 6 digits on their iPhone passwords, their smartphone passwords. And we are talking miles on from them already. So there's a conversation that I feel needs to be remembered by organisations of your sizes, that you are in danger of leaving people behind, and that is incredibly dangerous because, as we know, it only takes one person to make one mistake, and as Peter says, it can take a certain amount of time to find out that mistake has happened. But if we don't take them on the journey with us, then I think we can have the greatest technology in the world, but it doesn't really matter because there'll be a human being somewhere who will mess it up for us.
How many people are using technology here to handle cyber risk in this room? Well, not very many. Interesting. Peter?
Yeah, I think we use technology at different layers. I think you spoke to threat intelligence. You have certain TIP platform that you use. We connected to the industry and getting that feed, and including third parties, where our information is out there, they provide that information, and it connects down the pipeline to identify if some of those information, some of those, we call it IOCs, are within our environment. So I think over the last couple of years, there's been a lot more information sharing, which has helped with preventive and predictive cyber threat detection. So starting from that, then in terms of the cyber processes itself, we have our own tool that we use, now transitioning to Splunk, using the cyber threat detection. So you cannot detect cybersecurity without using some form of tool. So it's very important. It could be in-house, it could be a bunch of package too. Then from a control standpoint, we've developed like a database of controls where you try to have data fit into those controls to kind of see what is measurable and how you can react based on those data. There's always a challenge of data quality. So we do use a bunch of tools. I think what is more important is to make sure you have the right processes in place. Tools can change, have the right people, have the right processes, and it becomes easier to use whatever tools that you have. I think in the incept of cybersecurity, a lot of CISOs just threw a lot of tools at the problems, trying to, hopefully that those tools will catch things. But we've not looked at holistically where we had gaps, what tool is doing what, and we had a lot of duplication. I think using frameworks, we also use framework. I know you may not take the Metro attack framework now. You may not see that as a tool, but it is a tool. helping to identify what your tools are doing and across the different organizations, what is the strength of the tool. We've eliminated some duplication across different layers on the endpoint. We have some tools that are doing the same thing, sitting on the endpoint, and the one that has been done by the cyber team. That has helped to streamline some of the controls across the organization. So tool is a big factor in what we do.
And last but not least?
Yeah, similar to Peter, I mean, we have a mix of different tools, especially on the cyber protection side, to help us identify the threats and if possible, shut down some services that are at risk at the moment. And there are some, we are using different third-party solutions for that, that are utilizing on AI kind of services, etc. And then, of course, I mean, going back to what you said on the framework and getting all the controls framework in place and get them all aligned, that's a big topic for us at the moment because we have so many control frameworks within information security due to different needs and requirements from different parties, internally and externally. So that's something we are looking into now because I totally agree. We need to get the process in place and, of course, making use of the technology that is out there, but don't forget about people. We heard about that so many times yesterday. The people risk is on the top 5 list, top 5 risks of the ORX for financial sector, and we need to consider that both from being the threat if they don't understand the risk they are exposing us at, but also to understand the resources and the capabilities we need. And Joe said that there are today 3 million jobs available in the cybersecurity space globally. So that is what we are competing against when we are trying to attract new talent, but also, keeping the talent that we have at hand. So people, for me, always comes first, even though I'm working in a very techy industry and environment, of course.
Very good.
I think if I may add to that, I think that's the reality that you're always going to have to turn over. So the question is, how are you maturing your processes? How are you documenting the things that have been done by your team so that if you bring a new person in, they can get plugged in quickly, you have that reservoir of knowledge, and a person leaving does not carry what they have in their brain away. From a third line perspective, we're always looking for, are you documenting what you do? What is your frequency from updating this? Does it match some of the things we've seen? It's oftentimes your policies, procedures, processes may lack some of the technology operations. You should try as much as possible to bridge that gap because you know that the folks that are doing the job today will not be there tomorrow. So investing that time, there is a challenge of you saying, well, I have so much to do, they have so much to do, and they want to focus on that. But having those documentation, those processes tidied up, it's equally important to ensure sustainability of that control, regardless of who is operating those controls.
And that's what Joe was talking about yesterday, right? Recruiting the right people, upskilling them, and retaining them so that you've got that consistency across the board.
I think that sort of moves the whole cyber risk piece. So many businesses look at cyber risk as something else on the agenda, when actually it is just business risk. And as soon as you bring in the people, that becomes apparent. But if you keep that, it always used to be the IT team were these mysterious geeks sitting somewhere who none of us understood. And if you've got that attitude, it's going to be so difficult to do what Peter's talking about. But as soon as the board sees that actually cyber is part of the business risk, and therefore it includes the people, the education sector is a massive issue we have with this because every school has safeguarding at number 2 on its agenda and cyber risk at number 12, and they never get to number 12. But how many we see all the high glow jackets and CCTV cameras and everything outside schools. But honestly, how many kids have ever been taken from outside school gates? But how many schools have not suffered a cyber attack? Usually from inside, has to be said, from a 12-year-old. But even still, why isn't that higher up the list? It becomes part of the general risk. It's not something separate.
I think in the US, I think the board are more aware of cyber risk. They are asking questions about cyber risk. They are oftentimes driven by regulations. What are you doing from an oversight standpoint? I think the challenge is often understanding it, right? Because the CISOs often present some of the data I think challenging the data that is being presented, does it really speak to my risk profile? Where are we from a maturity journey, and where do we need to be as a financial institution? What is that gap? How do you measure success? How do you measure that you're, having the right metrics? I think that's where the challenge is, because there is a preponderance of metrics everywhere. So which ones are most relevant? Which one can speak to the risk? I think that's where there is a little bit of more disconnect. And I think it's a journey. There are regulations coming out that forces companies to think about this more holistically.
Very interesting and complex topic. I'm sure we could talk about this for much longer, but is it lunch now, guys?
It is, unless there's any burning...
questions.
Any burning question? No, okay.
Everyone wants to have their lunch.
Yes, of course.
Can I say thank you very much to the panelists
Thank you.
and Raoul?
I didn't do anything.
But that was great. So we are going to